What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Mekhi back in the building. You feel me? Now, today we got another reaction video for you guys today. There's been a big discussion about Michael Jordan's case, and I'm trying to clean up his case for him being the greatest player of all time. Now, most of you guys agree with me of thinking that Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time. This is just to keep on proving the point, okay? This video is going to talk about the myth that Michael Jordan had weak competition. People always tell me all the time, oh, Michael Jordan never played anybody that was worthy of him beating or anything like that. The defense was whack back then and all this other mess and BS and everything, right? So this video is going to prove it wrong. Now, of course, it's from Johnny Arnett. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to this video, and let's get to it. Let me pull up the video. Hold on one second. We're gonna start that in 3, 2, 1. You already know the iconic fadeaway.
It's a narrative we've heard over and over again, often from people who want to diminish Jordan's legacy. The claim is that Michael Jordan dominated a weak era. He didn't start winning until Magic got HIV, until Bird retired because of back problems, and until the Pistons run was done. People assume that because Jordan couldn't win in the 80s, but then won in the 90s, that it's because the competition weakened. But that's an opinion that's severely lacking context. When Jordan was losing in the 80s, Michael was performing at an MVP level, but Scottie Pippen hadn't developed into a
Hall of Fame level, actually.
1990.
That's a Hall of Fame career in itself.
Jordan was a lone all-star with a collection of role players.
Look, I'm gonna tell you right now, in the 80s when he was losing, that's a Hall of Fame career in itself. If you're gonna sit up here and tell me, because people told me that LeBron had 4 Hall of Fame careers. He had 4. So if you're going to tell me that his losing years between 2003 and 2010 when he went to Miami was a Hall of Fame career, then Michael Jordan's career from 84 to 90 was a Hall of Fame career. Before pre-Scottie Pippen, when he was dropping, 60-point games, 69 points is his career high, 63 in Boston. Yeah, that's definitely a Hall of Fame career.
Players going up against the super teams of the 80s. As good as Jordan was, alone he wasn't enough to take down a collection of all-stars like Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish.
Of course, it takes more than one
Isaiah Thomas,
star to
Joe
win.
Dumars, Bill Laimbeer, and Dennis Rodman. It takes a team to win in the NBA, and once Scottie Pippen developed into a co-star, the Bulls never looked back.
Exactly.
There's also the narrative that when the Bulls finally broke through and beat the Pistons in 1991, it was because the Pistons had become old and the Bulls were younger.
Cap. That's cap.
This is a bogus narrative that does nothing but discredit the Bulls' greatness. The Pistons' best player, Isaiah Thomas, was only 29 years old. Joe Dumars was 27 years old, Mark Aguirre was 31, Bill Laimbeer was 33, and Dennis Rodman was 29.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Michael Jordan won his first championship when he was, 28, 29? Pistons were not old, bro. Pistons were not old. That's not old. And usually you enter your actual prime when you're between 30 to 33 years old. That's when you enter your actual peak. That's when you really peak out for real in the NBA.
Most of their best players were in the prime age of their careers, yet the Bulls were too much for them. At that point, we had seen the Bulls and Pistons face each other in the playoffs 4 years in a row. So although the matchup between the Bulls and Pistons was getting old, the Pistons certainly were not.
Exactly.
The Bulls didn't start winning because the talent around the league had weakened. They won because a prime Jordan got some much-needed help that the other stars like Thomas and Bird had been enjoying throughout the 1980s.
100%
This
agree.
weak era narrative doesn't just stem from Jordan's failures in the 80s, but it also comes from people discrediting the teams he faced in the finals throughout the 90s. So with that being said, let's break it down year by year, looking at each team Jordan faced in the NBA Finals. The 1991 LA Lakers. The 91 Lakers finished the year with the third best record in the Western Conference with a 58-24 record. They were led by a still elite Magic Johnson, who even at 32 years old, still put up his usual 20 points and 12 assists per game. James Worthy was his usual running mate, who was averaging 21 points per game over the course of the year. There was also quality supporting players like Byron Scott, Vlade Divac, and Sam Perkins. With all of that being said, this was not the same Lakers team of the 1980s. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had recently retired, and both James Worthy and Byron Scott suffered injuries in Game 4 of the series versus the Bulls. Magic Johnson simply didn't have enough support to make the series interesting for Jordan and the Bulls, and the Bulls won the championship comfortably in only 5 games. In my opinion, this was the easiest opposition Jordan ever faced in the NBA Finals. The 1992 Portland Trail Blazers. The 92 Blazers finished the regular season with a 57-25 record, which was the best record in the Western Conference. They were coached by Rick Adelman.
Okay, before he talks about this, he even said this in The Last Dance, bro. Throughout the entire year, bro, Michael Jordan and Clyde Drexler, were talked about. They were compared. They were compared the entire year. So I don't understand how this was a weak team when they were compared and they were put up as a pedestal. Just because, okay, so for an example, I don't know if this is a good example, but when they compared LeBron in Miami Heat to Kevin Durant with the Oklahoma City Thunder, I think Kevin Durant was a worthy enough opponent to be compared to LeBron. I don't see the difference.
Who was a respected coach around the league and an annual Coach of the Year candidate. Adelman won nearly 60% of his games over his career and regularly coached teams into being elite squads defensively. This Portland team was no exception, as they were ranked the 3rd best team in the league defensively that year. They were obviously led by Clyde Drexler, who was in the prime of his career, averaging 25 points, 7 boards, and 7 assists. Clyde was the 2nd best shooting guard in the league behind Jordan. Behind their superstar in Clyde, they had plenty of depth to back him up. Clyde's co-star was the point guard Terry Porter, who averaged nearly 20 points per game and orchestrated the team's elite offense. Terry was also one of the most lethal and efficient three-point shooters in the game, which helped spread the floor for the Blazers. At small forward, they had the 29-year-old Jerome Kersey, who just 2 years prior was averaging 20 points per game of his own. They also had Buck Williams at power forward, who was a walking double-double.
I don't know.
He was the Rookie of the Year his first year in the league, and Buck was also one of the best defenders in the league at his position. Buck made 4 all-defense teams and was a 3-time NBA All-Star. On top of all of that, they had other quality and veteran players with experience, like the scrappy Danny Ainge, Clifford Robertson, and Kevin Duckworth, and each of those guys had made All-Star appearances in their careers. The Deep Blazers had a total of 6 players who averaged double-digit scoring that year, compared to the Bulls, who only had 3 players, Jordan, Pippen, and Horace Grant.
What was their record?
So I think you get the point. This Blazers squad was absolutely loaded with talent, and although many of the names on that team have since been forgotten, it would have been absolutely ludicrous in 1992 if you had said their team was weak. The 1993 Phoenix Suns.
All right,
the 93 Suns had finished the NBA season with a 62-20 record, which was the best record in the entire NBA. Not only did they have the best record in the league and the league's top-rated offense, but they also had the league MVP. Charles Barkley was one of the great...
Yeah, Michael Jordan was on a mission this year. This is low-key my favorite year for Michael Jordan, like my favorite ring. I don't know why. It just... I don't know. I don't know why, but I guess, the magic... Not the magic. Oh, my God. I did not mean to say that. The Michael Jordan and the Charles Barkley matchup, it just... I don't know. That whole rivalry. I love Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley has always been funny to me. He's just goofy. Just look at how he be playing, bro. He plays like a 7-year-old, bro. Look at how he be playing sometimes, bro.
Greatest players in NBA history, who was just 29 years old and coming off of a season where he averaged 25 points.
He dribbled like a 7-year-old, bro.
Assists. Helping Barkley was
the worst
26-year-old point guard Kevin Johnson,
was a terrible three-point
who was
shooter,
a 3-time All-Star and had been on 5 All-NBA teams. Kevin Johnson, the energy and effort behind the Suns' season, and had averaged 18 points and 9 assists that year. On this year's Suns was also the recently acquired Danny Ainge, who crossed paths with Jordan a lot in the playoffs. They also had Dan Marley, who was one of the best wing defenders in the NBA
Best
at this
defenders.
time,
Well,
and was
Michael
also
Jordan
an elite
shut
three-point
that down,
shooter
I ain't
who
gonna
was
lie.
chipping in 17 points per game that season. Add in quality veteran scorers like Tom Chambers and Cedric Ceballos, and what you have is one of the greatest teams ever to fail to win a championship. I'm telling you guys, this Phoenix team was incredible. They had absolutely everything, but it just wasn't meant to be. The Bulls were clicking at the right time, and Jordan had arguably the greatest final series of any player ever, as he averaged an incredible 41 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 6.3 assists
Oh yeah,
over
y'all
a
not
hard-fought six-game
y'all
series.
not beating that, bro.
The 1996 Seattle Supersonics.
Now, I don't. One thing that is like not talked about with the '96 Supersonics, that whole entire like series, is the fact that like they talk about how the Bulls went 72-10 and stuff like that, and how the Bulls almost swept them, and how they won in 6 games. In my personal opinion, I think this was one of Jordan's worst, like shooting wise, in the finals. Because as soon as Gary Payton switched on to MJ, I mean, he slowed him down. Of course, you can't stop Michael Jordan. You can't. But he slowed him down, definitely. I think one of the games he scored like 20-something points. I don't remember. But, yeah, man. Yeah, he definitely slowed him down. And he had, one of the games, it was a bad shooting percentage. This, shooting-wise, I think this was his, worst shooting series other than the 98 series. Because the 98 series, he had a reason. Because he had to do everything. But he's going to talk about it.
This Sonics team was another nasty one. The 96 Sonics finished their season with a 64-18 record, which was the best record in the Western Conference, but was still overshadowed by the Bulls' 72-10 record. They were coached by a Coach of the Year winner, George Karl, and with the exception of Jordan's Bulls, the Sonics had the best defense in the league that season. This Sonics group didn't have a single player who averaged over 20 points per game that season, but they were extremely gritty and well-balanced. They had their prime superstar tandem of Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp. Kemp averaged nearly 20 points and 11 boards and was known for his ferocity and aggression around the rim. Payton was also averaging almost 20 points, was an excellent facilitator, and was that season's steals champion and Defensive Player of the Year. Then you had Hersey Hawkins, who was a quality scorer and spark for the Sonics, Detlef Schrempf, a 6'9 small forward who was a 2-time Sixth Man of the Year winner who was averaging 17 points per game that season. These are the type of guys that people don't remember, but who are the difference makers in playoff basketball. This Sonics team was definitely championship worthy. With their collection of talent and their gritty defensive identity, they really remind me of the 2003-2004 Detroit Pistons.
And that Pistons team, that Pistons team was nice Lakers.
Too. As worthy as the Sonics team was, no one was beating Jordan and the 72-10 Bulls that season. The 1997 Utah Jazz.
You didn't talk about it.
The 97 Jazz finished the regular season with a 64-18 record, which was the best record in all of the Western Conference. The Jazz were the second best offense in the league that season, behind Jordan's Bulls, and they were also a top 10 defensive team. If you exclude Magic Johnson and Tim Duncan, then the 97 Jazz had arguably the greatest power forward ever and the greatest point guard ever in their starting 5. Stockton and Malone were a dynamic, championship-worthy tandem on both the offensive end and the defensive end.
Never won
Even
one,
beyond Stockton and Malone, the Jazz had plenty of depth that's been forgotten over the years, like Jeff Hornacek, who was a consistent and reliable third option for the Jazz, who was one of the best three-point shooters in the league. You know this Jazz team was legit by simply considering who they had to beat just to get to the finals. In the Western Conference Finals, the Jazz defeated the Houston Rockets.
The Rockets were supposed to go to the finals in '97, but John Stockton hit that shot. I forgot about that.
A Rockets super team stacked with Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, and Clyde Drexler leading the way. This Jazz team earned their stripes, but the Bulls handled them comfortably in 6 games. The 1998 Utah Jazz.
And this was just kind of just a rinse and repeat.
The 98 Jazz had relatively the
same
strong roster and finished the regular season with the best offense in the league and a 62-20 record. The most significant thing that changed since the previous season was that the Bulls had weakened. Jordan was 35 years old, Rodman was 37 years old, and Pippen was 32 and had missed nearly half of the season due to his laboring back problems. Yet despite all of those disadvantages...
But he was being selfish on it. See what I'm saying? Like, that whole entire year was a complete hot mess. If y'all watched The Last Dance, then y'all already know what happened. I'm not going to, talk too much about it. But yeah, Dennis Rodman, he went wrestling in the middle of the NBA Finals. Like, who does that? Scottie Pippen, of course, was being selfish for waiting until the beginning of the season to do surgery, and then coming back in like February of that following season. Like, it was a hot mess, man. And then to top everything off, in that NBA Finals game in Game 6, Scottie Pippen was having back problems the whole game, and I don't even know how many points he scored that night, but he definitely was a decoy that night. Michael Jordan had to do everything. He was relying on Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman almost fouled out. It was just a hot mess, bro. But they still got it done. They still got it done, and that's all that matters.
Jordan still led the Bulls to win in 6 games over the Jazz for their second straight season. In that final series, Jordan quite literally carried the Bulls as he averaged 33.5 points of the Bulls' 88 points per game that series. Now that I've recapped each finals team Jordan faced in the 90s, I want to make my closing point about generational talent. It's easy for the casual NBA fan to look at Jordan's competition of the 90s and criticize it because people simply don't remember the talent or weren't even watching at the time, so they don't truly know how talented those teams were. Think of the impact players in today's game, like Andre Iguodala, Steven Adams, Lou Williams, and Eric Gordon. These are just a few examples of talented players who are often the difference in wins and losses for their teams. But in a few decades, no one will be talking about these guys the same way no one talks about guys like Terry Porter, Dan Marley, Detlef Schrempf, and Jeff Hornacek. At a certain point, people won't remember the overall talent of teams, and it becomes just about the stars. The young casuals will say things like, so Jordan and Pippen beat Barkley in the finals, big deal. What else did Barkley have? A lot, actually. Heck,
it seems like they did.
It's not even the solid role players who get forgotten, but sometimes it's even the star players themselves. A perfect example of a modern player who...
I low-key might make a video about forgotten NBA stars. If y'all want me to do that, let me know in the comment section, bro. I might have to make videos on that because you got guys like Clyde Drexler, who else? Chris Webber, Reggie Miller don't get talked about that much. There's some stars out there that people don't really talk about anymore, and I might have to, make videos on that too. So let me know in the comment section.
Could eventually be forgotten is Paul George. Sure, he puts up great numbers and was even an MVP candidate for a while this year, but in 2 to 3 decades, people won't be talking about this guy. How do I know this? Because I've already seen it with guys like Adrian Dantley, Sidney Moncrief, Clyde Drexler, and Alex English. These were guys who averaged 25 to 30 points per game and carried their franchises year in and year out. But into the future, people generally don't talk about the greats who didn't win championships. So again, with that in mind, it's easy to see why people diminish Jordan's competition in the 90s, because when Jordan was playing in the 90s, he was the only one winning. And those are the ones we remember. No matter how you try and spin it, the reality is that Michael Jordan led a Bulls team that dominated an era of legitimate and fierce competition that many people just simply don't remember or just never knew. Thanks for watching my video, guys. Let me know in the comment section how you grade Michael Jordan's competition in the NBA Finals. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Low-key, he had a good point about how certain guys that played in that era are no longer talked about simply because they weren't winning, and that plays a big role. Like, there's a lot of players nowadays who are averaging 25, 30 points a game, but who are not winning. And that plays a role into why these players are not talked about, because they're not winning. It's that simple. They're not winning. They may have been competition for these players, like back in the 90s. They may have been competition for Michael Jordan, but they weren't winning. Michael Jordan was winning in the 90s. So I like how he brought that point up. That's gonna be the end of this video, man. Make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all the next one.